means that you are live.
Hello, me again, PS Livingstone, Pam. So I'm going to be reading tonight. Quite nervous, quite happy moderating a panel or talking to loads of other people or whatever, but yeah, a little bit nervous about this. So I'm going to be reading from my first book of my series. It's called Awakening. It's part of the Transcendence saga. It is sort of epic contemporary fantasy is what I'm calling it. The start of it probably has, as you'll gather, a sort of quite an urban fantasy feel to it, but that changes quite quickly in the book as it's moving to a completely separate realm, but it is set in modern times. So I'll do a bit of a reading. I've got a couple of chapters here. I'll just start with the first one. If there are questions, great. If there are not, then that's fine too. And I will just mosey on to the next one. So, okay. So, Transcendence Saga, Awakening, Book 1 by PS Livingstone, Chapter 1. I'm so glad you came out tonight, Brie. Laura hooked her arm through Aubrey's as they walked away from the cloakroom. What can I say, replied Aubrey. You wore me down. She pulled a face. Trust me, this is exactly what you need. All work and no play makes Aubrey a dull girl. Thanks for that. Aubrey tried to call it a night at the bar, but Laura was a force to be reckoned with and resisted all her attempts to say no. It didn't help that Aubrey couldn't mount a defence. In the months since she'd moving from New York to London, she'd focused almost exclusively on her job, a fact which her co-workers had commented on more than once. With the relaunch under her belt and a holiday weekend on the horizon, there wasn't a viable reason not to let off steam. She just wasn't sure her friend's idea of letting off steam matched hers. The heavy beat reverberated through the building, gaining in strength as they made their way up the stairs. Revellers lined the walls, perhaps seeking respite from the musical assault. One caught her eye as she passed and winked. Aubrey pulled her dress tighter to her legs and hurried up to keep up with Laura. Hey guys, Donna waved from the top. This place is amazing. Who's up for a dance? Great idea. Donna pushed open the doors to a balcony overlooking the dance floor and the throng of bodies lost in the pulsating bass. Garish lights flashed on and off, illuminating the dancers in one pose, only to have them reappear in another. Smoke curled above them, eddying and swirling as hands reached high into the air and they danced on. I'll get us some drinks, Aubrey said. What? After 2 more attempts, Aubrey gave up being heard over the music and mimed instead. Not waiting for a response, she fought her way towards the bar, wishing with each step to be as carefree as everyone around her. The clubbers had the ability to switch off, take advantage of the anonymity and merge with the crowd. Aubrey felt oppressed by it, as if the collective weight of so much forced enthusiasm was crushing down on her. Too much raw emotion, too few inhibitions, and too close quarters. Aubrey gasped when she saw the sign of the rooftop terrace and made a beeline for it. Up on the roof, Aubrey ordered 3 Jack Daniels and a Coke, texted her friends her location, and took refuge in a booth by the wall. Potted plants, arranged with discretion, provided her a small measure of privacy, though it didn't blot out the few odd looks from those sitting nearby. It might have bothered her once, but being alone and being lonely weren't the same, and Aubrey had long since come to understand the difference. As she sipped her drink, the obligatory fairy lights strung overhead reflected in the ice cubes. Aubrey's eyes followed the dancing spots of light and let her mind wander. There you are. Aubrey jerked her head up, coming face to face with the guy who winked at her on the stairs. She wasn't sure how long she'd sat there, but long enough to plough her way through 2 of the 3 drinks. Hi? Mind if I join you? Aubrey didn't get the chance to object before he slid into the booth next to her with practiced ease. His knee bumped against hers, prompting Aubrey to cross her legs and tilt away. Hey, I don't bite. He broke into a wolfish grin. I'm Colin, by the way. Aubrey. Oh, you're a Yank. I hope not one of those ones who comes over and steals English jobs. Aubrey managed a tight smile. Guilty as charged. I'll try not to hold it against you. The yeasty stench of stale beer washed over her as he laughed, oblivious to her distaste. So, Aubrey, what type of job did you steal? I'm a photographer. Oh, a photographer, eh? Maybe you could take some pictures of me. He turned one way and then the other. Which is my best side? I'm sure they're both great, but it's not really the sort of work I do. A photo's a photo, no? He leant in. I wouldn't mind examining you through a lens. Aubrey clasped the disc on her necklace in her fist and imagined using it as a bola. Instead, she gave him a non-committal shrug. Without encouragement, Colin prattled on about his job, amateur rugby, which could have gone professional if not for his knee injury, and new car, while she did her best to look bored. Self-confidence was a trait Aubrey admired, but Colin had sidestepped into overcompensation. So, got a boyfriend then? Not right now. Aubrey wanted to scream at herself as his eyes lit up. Why did she not say yes? But I'm with my friends and not looking for anything serious. Again, she said the wrong thing and gulped the last of her drink, nearly choking on an ice cube when he placed a hand on her knee. She snapped her leg up, stealing a moment of satisfaction as the table sandwiched his fingers. She donned her most unapologetic smile. Whoopsie. Colin shook out his hand. So, what are you drinking? Oh, hold that thought. I've got to take a piss. He reversed, pointing a finger at her. Don't go anywhere. Aubrey scooted out of the booth the moment he disappeared from view, but only made it a few feet before she ran into Donna. Brie, impeccable timing. Listen, I'm going to go. Say bye to Laura for me. Donna put her arm out. Hang on, that's what I was coming to tell you. Laura bumped into an old uni friend and we're heading to a party at her flat. You up for it? Donna glanced around. She caught Aubrey looking over her shoulder. What's the matter? Some douche who isn't getting the message. I'd like to be gone when he comes back from the bathroom. Gotcha. Donna grabbed Aubrey's hand. Let's go. The two women descended the stairs, back into the pounding, strobe-lit confusion of the club. Progress was slow through the press of club-goers, zigzagging to squeeze past immovable huddles of people. By the time they fought their way back to the cloakroom, they both felt worse for wear. It was a lot more fun when I was one of them, said Donna, adjusting her outfit. I nearly lost my skirt. Sorry, I think that was me, said Aubrey. Donna laughed. Did you also grab my boob? Possibly. Aubrey grinned. I couldn't see what I was grabbing in there. Best offer I've had all night. Oh, hang on, my phone's buzzing. It's Laura. Hi, where are you? Yeah, she's here. I don't know. Bray, the others are outside in a taxi. Are you coming? I'm going to call it a night. Too much excitement for me. No, she's heading home. Laura, she doesn't want to. Just you guys go then. Oh, right, okay, let me come and get it. Yep, bye. Donna slipped her phone into her bag. Laura has my jacket. I'll be right back. Listen, why don't you go with them? You. Aubrey smiled. We live on the opposite sides of the city and I still need to get my coat. Go and have fun and I'll call you tomorrow. Torn between her conscience and continuing the night out, Donna took quite a bit of persuading to leave. Even as she waved goodbye, Aubrey saw the conflict, but she kept her smile on, determined not to ruin anyone's good time. Aubrey handed her ticket over at the cloakroom, drumming her fingers against the desk as she waited. All that stood between her and a pair of pyjamas was a taxi ride. Then slippers, a glass of wine, and an episode of something trashy on Netflix. You read my mind. Aubrey squeezed her eyes shut as Colin's voice came over her shoulder. Far from it, she muttered. She turned around. Listen, Colin, I'm sure you're a perfectly nice guy, but I'm going home, alone. Kiss goodnight. He wrapped his arms around her and pulled her in close. Aubrey shoved against his chest with both hands, incredulity and anger giving her a strength she didn't know she had. Colin stumbled backwards in a sprawl of arms, straight into the man behind him. She grimaced as the contents of his glass went up in the air and splattered all over his shirt. Oh God, I'm so sorry, said Aubrey, rushing over. It had to be red wine, didn't it? She started mopping at the stained material. Let me buy you another. The words dried in her mouth as she registered who she'd thrust Colin into. The words brick shithouse sprang to mind. He had thick, dark hair flecked with grey, and it fell wild about his roguish face. Amused eyes peered down at her. Don't worry about it, he said. These things happen. He looked down at Colin, attempting to pick himself up off the floor. This one yours? Not if I can help it. Up you get, youngster. The man hauled Colin up as if he weighed nothing. Time for you to go home. Get your fucking hands off me. Colin swatted away the man's hands and glared at Aubrey. Stuck up bitch. Aubrey recoiled, the sting of his insult and the morbid glee of the onlookers making her face glow red. Excited chatter ran through the air, as torrid and suffocating as the music and the bodies on the dance floor. I don't like you, said the man, his gaze turning to steel. And, said Colin. As Aubrey watched the two men, something became clear. Despite his gentlemanly behaviour and appearance, her would-be protector was altogether more and infinitely capable of destroying the idiot stood before him. No, she said, please don't. Though her words had scant been above a whisper, he heard her, and his aggressive stance became nonchalant once again. A glazed stupor came over Colin's face before he did an about-turn and headed straight out the front door. He seems to have had a change of heart. Aubrey wasn't fooled. Something beyond a change of heart had just occurred, and she took a step back. His eyes found hers, and she squirmed under the scrutiny. He put a hand out. I'm Nate, he said. Who might you be? Fighting a tremor, she accepted the handshake. Aubrey. The blood thudding inside her head didn't disguise his sharp intake of breath, and his other hand closed over the top. His gaze remained trained on her. Well, Aubrey, it's a great pleasure to meet you. Perhaps I'll let you buy me that drink after all. Aubrey smiled a thin smile, fished in her purse, and handed him a £20 note. That should cover it, even at London prices. Well played, he replied, shaking his head and refusing the money. My boyfriend wouldn't like it if I had drinks with a strange man. Is that so? It's been my experience that women tend to say they have a boyfriend to avoid awkward situations with men who are hitting on them. There's no excuses necessary. Okay then, she said. I'm not interested in seeing anyone. Thank you for being honest. And just so you know, I wasn't hitting on you. No? No. Nate bent down to her ear and whispered, You've been touched, Aubrey, and by something incredibly powerful. I won't lie by saying I'm not interested in what, but you need to be very careful. Plenty out there would use you for it. She glanced up, searching for any hint of deception. But not you? I have no desire or need to. You saw enough to believe that, I think. What are you? She asked. Naive or playing dumb? He stroked his thumb over his bottom lip. The real question is, what are you? It was a question Aubrey had asked herself many times, but hadn't summoned the courage to answer. Over the years, she'd become adept at seeing beneath a person's surface. But just as she'd seen through his veneer, he saw through hers. She couldn't deny a certain allure, but interactions broke the golden rule. It's late, said Aubrey. I'd better be going. If I give you my number, will you call me? He held out a business card. You know, if you're suddenly racked with concern for whether the stain comes out of this shirt or the urge to confess how a young woman came to hold the power you do overwhelms you. She took the card and put it in her purse without looking. I don't have any power. He raised an eyebrow. Bye, Nate. Nate watched her. She grabbed her coat off the counter and hurried out the door, trying to rationalise the bizarre emanations she gave off. Found something interesting? Nate turned to face his brother, the epitome of the persons he'd warned Aubrey against. An enigma like her would never escape his attention. Nothing much, just a pretty girl, Nate replied. Must have been special to spin your head. Want to go after her? No thanks. If our business here is finished, I'd like to head back to New York. Is the plane ready to go? Warren narrowed his gaze as he regarded Nate. Nate sighed. I helped her out. She was getting some hassle off a guy and spilled my drink. That would explain your shirt, although it is an improvement. We don't all want to look like Hugo Boss's love child, said Nate. Anyway, the guy pissed me off, and I want to leave before I hunt him down and beat the shit out of him for being drunk and stupid. I'm game for that too. Let's just get to the airport and go home. Fine, but we both know you're a damn liar, Nate. Nate shrugged and walked away. Oops, what have I done? There we go. Okay, so that's chapter 1. I tend to write in quite short chapters. I think, just as an idea for myself, I quite like short chapters. You know, if everyone's busy, you want to read a couple, you can sort of batter on through them. So I quite like the short chapter. Whether that's something that translates, I guess time will tell as and when the book is released. So yeah, does anybody have any questions or anything about it? Have a quick look at the screen. Oh, let's see. Who's all here? Oh, there's a few of you. That's nice. Oh, Annabelle. Hello, lovely. Missy, you got this. Looking forward to reading. Jessica, Demo, thank you. Yes, you did beta reading. You read this novel for me. Thank you so much. Crystal, hello. Aubrey, I know you love her. Yeah, she's a favourite of yours. Definitely, I know that. And Crystal, yeah, wishing to be carefree. I know that kind of feeling of being in a club and everyone's having a great time and it doesn't feel like that to you. So yeah, Aubrey likes to be around people. She wants to make connections, but she's not, the big group thing's not really for her. So, you know, that's, yeah, very much that the case. Annabelle, was that the first reading of Awakening? Well, poor Andrew's heard it several times tonight while timing me. But yes, I've never read that to actual humans with ears and live on the internet. Crystal, when does this come out? I don't have a plan for release at the moment. I've kind of been in query hell for a bit. Had a couple of full manuscript requests, still waiting to hear back from a couple, so we'll see. I think my plan is just to try and finish book 2 And at that point, you know, I think the plan is probably to kind of self-publish and then hopefully follow up with the second book shortly after. I never really wanted to self-publish until I had book 2 sort of banged down a little bit, but certainly making steps to kind of get that out there. Also, Corn Corner Virginia has asked me submission publication. So yeah, so I kind of answered that question already. I have a map, if you would like to see map. Hang on, I'm on YouTube, so I need to go back. Okay, so this is the world that we inhabit, Tenarius. This is the Fey realm. So that is the map there. That was designed by Michael, and I think you can see his second name's just completely out of my head. Baker, I think. And I will post that, actually, a link to his website afterwards. He designed that for me. So I drew it really badly, and then he did a beautiful job of rendering it into an actual map. As a total sado, I also have a framed copy, oops, hang on, on my wall there, which I don't know if you can see, which I got given for Christmas, which was a really lovely present, and I'm very fond of it. Okay, so where do the inspirations from the characters come from? I think in some ways, some of them have been rattling around my head for quite a long time, particularly my Fae characters. So our demon characters, originally actually a good friend of mine, she developed some of them, and then we used to write together, and then I sort of took them on and developed them and changed them and sort of adapted them into this story. So I do owe her quite a lot for kind of introducing me to some of the concepts then of stuff we used to work on together. And over the years, they've changed and morphed into kind of the characters that they are today. Some of them have just evolved as we've gone along. Elements of them just sort of happen, really. I mean, I think my characters surprise me a lot. I don't always know where they're going to go or what they're going to do. Sometimes I get to the end of a chapter and I'm like, didn't know that was going to happen. So sometimes I think they have a mind of their own, and I don't know where every aspect of them came from. When I do kind of come up with something that I find funny about them or I like about them, they go down in my character profiles. Like Nate loves a Christmas jumper. Mostly he wears them in like July just to annoy his brother. That's probably something that will never come out in the books, but it makes me laugh to think about it anyway. Yeah, so that's kind of, they exist in my head, and sometimes they just occur. Yeah, so the whole thing is contemporary fantasy with Fae. Yeah, it is. I mean, some of it's set in the Fae realm of Tenarius. Most of the book is with some sort of little bits of back and forward. Book 2, there'll be more of a mix between the Fae world and the human world, and in the third book we'll look more into the sort of demons and going into hell a little bit and sort of seeing what's going on there. So that's kind of the progression of the book. Any plans to explore Cathal's backstory? Yeah, I don't know about short story novella. That may come. I know, Damo, that you and I have talked about writing some fight scenes, some of the prehistory war stuff way back when Cathal first got his crown and the war that ensued. Then we've talked about writing some fight scenes together, because that's definitely your thing rather than mine. We will hear more about Cathal's backstory, but primarily in book 3, we'll find out kind of how he came to be who he is. He's not always the most likable character in the world. He's my favourite, mostly because I have a terrible crush on him, I think. And he's not always the most likable, and he'd be quite harsh, but deep down, I think he's sacrificed more than anybody will ever know for the things that have happened. So we'll find out a little bit more about him and why that happened, and how he came to be who he is, and the fact that he's ridiculously overpowered. Callahans, yes, we will find more about the Callahans. We see a bit of Nate, we see Tyler, a bit of Poe, and some of Cain in book 1. We'll find out more about Warren and see a little bit more of his. Yeah, he's a nasty one at times. We'll see more about Warren and some of the others, and the ones that are maybe briefly mentioned but never actually seen, and then exploring more of them into book 3 definitely, and the kind of history of Amelia and Nate and Warren and all the kind of the relationship and backstory between the three, between Satan's 3 children, I suppose. So yeah, so we'll see more of them as well, but you get little bits of their backstory, and we kind of get to know them as time goes on. So if they're Fae and demons, does that mean the Fae are somewhat angelic and that the demons, or that the demons not demonic in that way? The Fae, no, I wouldn't say the Fae are angelic. I won't say too much more about the angel front. That would be a spoiler. The history of the demons is theoretically that they were once angels, and all of the demons carry a sin, and they are defined by the sin that they carry. Like Warren is the keeper of cruelty and callousness, Nate is the keeper of false prophecy, Amelia is the keeper of hope, which you would think would be a good thing, but I think hope can sometimes be the cruelest of all when it's false hope. And they have the kind of the royal demons are different to your average demon asshole, and they kind of discuss that a little bit in the book, and that they're more measured and less controlled potentially by their sins, but rather they can control those things in others. And the extent to which the ordinary demons just running around, run-of-the-mill demons can control things, it varies in the same way that the Fae are. They don't all have the same abilities, not the same strength, not, you know, and it varies from one to the other. So I wouldn't say that the Fae are inherently better. They're less chaotic, but probably more insular, in that the demons have probably acclimatized into the human realm better, and the Fae have kind of hidden away in their world, and very few of them really cross over anymore, Cathal being one of them, as part of his role that he has as the king that he is. So yeah, they're quite insular. They can be quite, Fae can be quite arrogant sometimes. They're kind of convinced of their own superiority in some ways, because they see themselves as better as the demons, but whether they are is probably questionable. And this is something that demons will go back and forward with the Fae, and it'll be a bickering between them. Now some of it's quite funny, in that the Fae can't grow beards, and so the demons like constantly needle them about it. And there's really funny things like that. Mostly I find them funny. Whether anybody else finds them funny, I don't know. But I do. And there's probably quite a lot of wee in-jokes. Okay, can you, without giving any spoilers, can you give us any hints on what's coming in book 2? Yeah, we see I suppose Aubrey explore her powers a little bit more, and you know, and her coming to terms, I think, with the emotion that brings out, and sort of dealing with all the things that happened in the first book. Yeah, she's growing in power, but a lot of it's tied to how she feels about things, and sometimes her feelings are running away with her. And if you kind of, I won't too many spoilers, but if you know kind of what she's dealt with in the first book, that's very frightening to her. So in some ways she's constantly hiding from her power and from her emotions, and that has consequences. So that's kind of a part of it. A lot of the stories carried over from book 1. There's a lot of unresolved issues, or a sort of running story. And where the book starts, I suppose, in terms of the second chapter, where Aubrey finds a young girl who's on the run from a trafficking ring, that's not really entirely dealt with, and actually that is carried on to book 2 as to who's behind all that. The Fae think it's the demons wonder if it's the Fae. It's neither, is the answer to that entirely. And we look at them probably, the demons and the fae, being forced to work together more and more to try and figure out exactly what's going on, because anybody that can hide from both Cathal and Warren is somebody to be worried about. And that's kind of where the story kind of goes. Okay. What drew you to writing about fae and demons? It's a good question. I don't know. I think on some level, I really like the fae, and I think of fae and fairy as being something different. I think, you know, the fae is quite often used as a collective term, or fairy, or you know, that kind of idea. But I see that's quite a different idea. There's a very specific group of people for me, and I think that sort of idea, I don't know why it's in my head, it just is, and it's a story that's kind of been there for a really long time. I think they're really close to nature, and there's just something about them that I find quite attractive, or the way that I see them in my head. And I think demons are kind of, I don't know, they're scary, but I think I don't like them to be too typical. I think there's been loads of incarnations of demons over the years, and you can do a lot with them. And I think this is actually, the demons, although terrifying in lots of ways, and certainly the elder demons cannot ever die, in some ways they're more human than the fae, and I like that aspect of them, whereas the fae can be quite superior and a little bit arrogant, as I said. So I suppose I've taken two halves and changed them a bit, but the bottom line is, yeah, I don't really know, it's just there. Like, I hear a lot of writers say that, it just came out of my head, I don't know what put it there. Probably childhoods of watching things like Labyrinth and Legend and The Dark Crystal, and that been ruminating around my head for 40 odd years. That'll do it. Anything else that people want to ask? I think we are running close to time. Virginia will tell me how close I'm getting, no doubt, or interrupt me when I'm waffling. Somebody stop me.
You've got, I'd say, yeah, you can answer maybe one more question, and then we'll wrap so they can start on time for the 7:15 slot.
Okay, so is book to the end? No, there will be a third book, so there's going to be a trilogy. I know, such a cliche. So yes, I'm going to be a cliched trilogy, and with the potential to possibly for some novellas, maybe like a wee introductory one, or some extra chapters that have been cut. I think I might make them into something more. And I'm writing a bestiary, which has of all the animals and stuff I've created, and creatures and things, and I hope that to be an accompaniment at some point. And this idea of how far, so yeah, I think it can go a long way. I think there's room for back history and lots of things, but at the moment, yeah, just finishing book 2, and I've written the end to book 3 actually.
All right.
Weirdly, I've written the very last chapter, so I know where it's going to end up. Yeah, so just keep working on that.
That's some that seems like some pretty good planning. And yeah, we should probably wrap if there aren't too many urgent questions left. It seems like you answered them all. Nicely done.
Yeah, thank you.
But thank you so much, Pam, for reading. That was actually, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
Which is not surprising, because I enjoyed your reading too. But but I hadn't heard that before, and it's a cool story, and I was thoroughly engaged, from everything from like, oh god, yeah, we've all been there, to to the lovely fae twist, or not fae, but magical twist. Yeah, loved it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. So,
oh gosh, thank you.
And thanks everybody for your comments and everything. That was lovely.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. And we're off, and JD Brink is up next, and then the last panel of the evening is at 8 p.m. Central with the bloggers and reviewers. So everyone, please make sure to come to both of those events. We'll see you next time. Bye. And we're not live anymore.
Okay.